welcome to another edition of BASTA TV from the BASTA 2012 in Mainz. With me is Steve Teixeira. He's Director of Program Management at Microsoft for the Visual Studio platform. Hello, Steve.
Hi, Mirko. How are you?
Steve, this morning you gave a keynote here, the opening keynote of the BASTA, and the title was Windows 8 Application Model. And one thing you mentioned was a meme, and you said, meet them where they are, and you meant the developers. Yes. What does this meme mean?
Well, you know what, at Microsoft and in DevDiv, where we produce Visual Studio and the .NET platform, increasingly you're going to see us trying to figure out where developers are and meet them there. And there's a difference. I would say years ago, it was a completely valid business strategy to win over developers by kind of building a great proprietary development platform and winning developers to the platform through the strength of how productive you can make developers, how differentiated their apps could be, et cetera. So you'd offer them compelling business value in that way, and developers would come and use the platform and use the tools. And I would say the big difference between, maybe that was the 10 or 15 years ago strategy to today is developers have so many choices today with programming language, open source libraries, IDEs, you name it, developers get to choose, and they do. Increasingly, I think, developers think about themselves less as, oh, I'm a blah language developer, like I'm a C# developer or a C++ developer or Java developer, and they think about themselves more in terms of the kinds of software they build. I'm a mobile dev. I'm a desktop dev. I build server apps. I build web apps. And we see developers picking up whatever makes sense to them, whatever they feel like they can get value from. And so we feel like it's important for Microsoft to embrace that work style that developers have. Increasingly, I think you see this, particularly with the younger developers kind of coming up in the industry. They just use whatever kind of works for a particular problem and build solutions and kind of glue things together. So it's important for us to embrace that work style, and I think it helps bring more applications to Microsoft platforms and more of the right applications that that people appreciate. So if we've got folks out, for example, building a mobile app, and today, it's no secret that mobile app development is happening largely on iPhone and on Android. To me, it's a great strategy to say, hey, who are these guys out there building these apps, and what can we at Microsoft do to make it very compelling for them to come and use our tools and our platform, and maybe leverage some of the code they already have and bring it to the Microsoft Windows Phone platform. Yeah.
Regarding the mobile apps, you mentioned this morning that HTML5 and JavaScript are lingua francas because they can be used for mobile apps and desktop apps.
That's right.
Yeah. Can you describe a little bit this new paradigm?
Yeah, it's there's this new renaissance around cross-platform. Like cross-platform used to be a big thing people talked about years ago, and then for the past several years, maybe up to a few years ago, the Windows PC was kind of the dominant computing platform for everybody. Most people's interactions with computers happened on a Windows PC, so the practical need for cross-platform was much less. Now as the web has emerged, as mobile has emerged as a huge driver of computing cycles, what we're seeing is that it's increasingly important for developers to be able to leverage what they do across all of these multiple platforms. It's not just one kind of device that people are experiencing applications from. It's lots of different devices. And so there are a bunch of ways you can go do that. The way that seems to be emerging as the standard is, well, if you have a user interface that you can build really well in something like HTML and JavaScript, you should do that because you know that thing, you're going to be able to leverage a lot of that code on a web page, so you can have a great web UI. You know you're going to be able to use that across many mobile devices. You know you'll have a great Windows 8 experience there. It just works everywhere. The other piece of this we're seeing, so there's kind of a corollary to the lingua franca, is that people are building C++ on the back end often, because they can take that C++ code and they can use that in many places as well. So kind of this combination of JavaScript and C++, And there's kind of a third piece to this, which is, okay, so you've got JavaScript, which kind of covers a big swath of applications, especially if you mix it with some C++ components for where you need high performance or whatever. And then you've got cross-platform in that. But we still see a lot of enthusiasm for developers to pick up what I'll call platform-specific developer tools. So if you're on Windows, for example, that might be WinRT. Or that might be something like a XAML-based, one of the XAML-based UI frameworks from Microsoft. Or if you're on iOS, it might mean Objective-C or Java on Android. Developers are not just willing, but enthusiastic about picking up these tools to do the platform integration part of their app. So they want to leverage what they can in UI from HTML. They want to leverage what platform independent stuff they can with C++. But then to get at the core capabilities of the hardware and the platform, they want to go use the thing that the platform vendor says, yeah, this is the thing that you use to get the most out of my device. I feel like we spent many, many years in this keyboard, monitor, and mouse rut where everybody kind of interacted with the same kind of computer in the same kind of way. And now we see an explosion of different screen sizes, different kinds of sensors, different color depths and DPI on devices, and then different modes of interaction from touch to gesture to Kinect-like things where I can just kind of gesture in the air. People's expectations are rising for what it means to have a great application on a particular platform. So developers are eager to go out there and kind of differentiate. So to kind of bring it all home, HTML, JavaScript, certainly a key technology to allow people to leverage things across many devices. But you still see these other two big pieces of C++ components, as well as components that are more specific to a given platform. On the Microsoft platforms, that's WinRT for Windows 8, or more broadly, the .NET platform across a broader range of Microsoft platforms.
You mentioned a lot of topics right now, and it sounds really extreme, the difference between C++, which is working on the machine, and HTML5, but all that is covered within, or possible to cover within one app, when I do get it right.
It is.
So the developer has a whole range of possibilities to develop apps. And you mentioned WinRT, which is the original Windows 8 runtime for Windows Store apps. That's the new name now.
That's right.
And this morning you said in your keynote that it is also possible. One thing is that an existing application that is running on Windows 7 will run on the Windows 8 without any problem. And now we have this range from C++ to HTML5 to write new apps using WinRT libraries. And you mentioned that the developer has the chance to write desktop apps using WinRT too. But on one hand, that seems very, very straightforward to say, okay, you can do everything on the Windows 8 platform, but that excludes the app the developer writes from Windows 7. How do you target this problem, that a developer who has maybe an existing app and he wants to pimp it and say it should work on Windows 8 with Windows 8 features, but it still should work on Windows 7 for my old customers? Yeah,
that's right. It's pretty common for, if I'm a developer, I'm building an app for some platform, for the Windows platform, let's say, and when the new version of Windows comes out, I want my app to light up with all the cool new features of the platform so that my app feels modern, my app feels like it's a tightly integrated part of the operating system. And but you point out the key problem here, which is developers also want to be able to, if you're in business, you want to sell to the broadest audience of customers, right? That means maybe you don't just want to sell to Windows 8 users, maybe you want to sell to everybody who uses any version of Windows. So this gets into this kind of issue of, well, how do I do that light up? And there are a bunch of ways you can do it technically. It's generally pretty straightforward to, within an application, for example, to dynamically detect, okay, what operating system am I running on? If I'm running on XP, let me dynamically load some of the support for Windows XP. I might have an experience that's not as cool if I was running on Windows 8. but it might be great for Windows XP. On the other hand, if I detect, for example, that I'm running on Windows 8, I might be able to load in some new WinRT stuff or some .NET 4.5 stuff that I know is going to be there, and then enjoy all of that functionality. So developers can get the best of both worlds, and I've actually seen a bunch of real-world examples of folks that are building Windows 8 apps today that are kind of taking the strategy. If Win 8's there, we can do a bunch of interesting new things. Mostly what they would like to do is, or as kind of a minbar, make it look like a Windows 8 app. Maybe it's kind of making it the more Windows Store style with flat user interface and not a lot of decorative chrome and shades and bevels and things that are kind of maybe a little bit more distracting, I guess, to users. Or maybe they want to get some specific piece of functionality like a location API or something. If that's, they can enhance their app to say if I'm on Win 8, I can use a location API. If I'm on XP, I might not be able to get that kind of behavior. So it's a great question, and it's definitely something that developers are constantly weighing. Like, how do I get the broadest possible audience, but at the same time, how do I make sure my app looks cool and new and relevant and takes advantage of the latest in the platform?
At this point of the app looks cool or looks Windows 8 style.
Yeah.
You support that with Visual Studio. There you showed us some built-in templates for the surface or the UI. That's quite new for developers. That's something they have to learn new, I think.
Yeah, we've provided a bunch of user interface guidelines for what store apps kind of should look like and how they should behave. What kind of gestures should you respond to? And then there's some interesting intersection points with the system, so that so I can participate in contracts, for example, so that my app knows how to share its contents, via the side charms menu in Windows, or it knows how to participate in search, or it knows how to be a provider for file open dialogues. And there's all these things that an application can do that has actually been pretty difficult for apps to do in the past, but now they can feel like a more integrated part of the application ecosystem. So this goes to kind of both UX style guidelines, as well as there's just a bunch of support in Visual Studio where we do the heavy lifting to enable you to say, oh, I want to add a new search contract. Let me go ahead and add that in. And that's mainly a non-UI thing that allows you to participate in that world. I think one of the interesting things for me anyway is the bar keeps rising for user experience. Like back in my day, we could get away with writing an application that looked like some kind of ransom letter of when I was a developer, whatever, 15 years ago, looked kind of like a ransom letter. But that's okay, because that was kind of the bar. That's what software looked like. Different fonts, different you try not to make it look ugly, of course, but today applications, the expectation is that applications will be professionally designed. Not all of us are professional designers, so having the right set of templates to start with is really important for people that might be more technically inclined than artistically inclined. But I also think it means that it's going to be increasingly important for developers and designers to work closely together, so that if I make my living selling software, I want to make sure I get every advantage I can in terms of how people feel when they're engaging with my software. Is it immersive? Does it trigger the right emotions? Is it is the usability there?
And you support this with Visual Studio 2012. And where is Visual Studio heading to? Will it be one day that, or in the near future, that developers who are used to Visual Studio will not be able to work with it because it has lots of new features? Or how do you try to target this, that they still can do their existing work or what they are used to, or do with it what they are used to, and do the new stuff? Is that a parallel way, or is it all integrated in Visual Studio? Where is it heading to? Yeah,
your question hits on a key business challenge we deal with every version of the product. We have to answer this question of, okay, what kind of, we're always very sensitive to backward compatibility, for software developers especially. Ideally, we don't even like to break people's source code. So to the degree possible, we try to make sure that people can take their source code that was building with the previous version of Visual Studio and take it to the current version, and everything works very, very smoothly. Of course, sometimes in the name of helping people make forward progress, either in the tools front or on the platform front, breaking changes are necessary. And then you kind of hit on the other one, which is, well, at what point do you say that thing's just too old, or that way to do it is just no longer relevant, and you kind of leave that behind. I would say we err on the side of keeping things in Visual Studio, so it is a complex product. What we try to do is we try and make a happy path, if you will, through the product, where if you're kind of sticking on the paved roads in Visual Studio, things work really, really smoothly. If you're doing something a little bit older maybe, like let's say MFC. MFC turned 20 years old this year. It's an old framework, but customers continue to rely on MFC. And we kind of do this check and ask ourselves every version. We say, okay, is this the version that we don't put MFC in the box? And then we go and we look at what customers are doing, and lots of them are still doing it. And so we're like, yeah, we don't have a better place for them to go. They're happy doing it. Let's keep making those MFC customers happy. And so it's something we continue to ask ourselves. But at the end of at the end of that evaluation for 2012, we said MFC needs to stay in Visual Studio. It's going to be a complicated. It's going to be more complicated than writing UI with XAML, for example, or writing it with HTML. The designers are nowhere as nice, all of that kind of stuff. So I would characterize kind of the XAML design experience or the HTML design experience with Blend as the paved road, where it's really nice. But then, if you're one of those people that needs to do something different, that's okay. We got you covered there too. Yeah. Some would say we should break backward compatibility more often to simplify. I don't know. I think we usually land in a pretty sane place, which is, me personally, I don't like to consider breaking people's code or not providing a good upgrade experience unless we have something for them to land into that's clearly better with a smooth on-ramp to the new thing.
Okay. It sounds like a future time with great opportunities for developers. Thank you very much, Steve.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.